Okay, well, my microphone doesn't work. So, there you go. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. I'm going to go over every book that I read in 2021, and I'm just going to tell you rapid fire if I think they are still good. My thoughts 2 years later. Okay? One. And also, let's see how many there were this year. Not that many. Only 24. So let's see. One, tidy the fuck up. The American Art of Organizing Your Shit. No thoughts. I don't own that book anymore. And, I mean, my mom got it for me for Christmas. And now I'm obsessed with organization and decluttering. And I think it's a little bit of a nightmare for her. Icelandic folk and fairy tales. No thoughts. It got me a job reading that book, I think, but no thoughts other than that. All Systems Red. Great book. Great book. I read that book in one night. It's so good. And I still own it. I still think it's so good. Native Plant Stories. I owned it at the time. I got rid of it. I read it one story at a time while sitting on the toilet. And I don't remember any of it really. Clap When You Land. Great book. I listened to the audiobook of it driving to and from work at like midnight. And I don't own it anymore, but that's specifically because I didn't feel like I needed to own it, and I wanted someone else to have a chance to read it. But I love that book. The Colorado Kid. That's a Stephen King book. I think it's the only Stephen King I've ever read, and I really liked it. Took place a little bit in Colorado and talked about like some highways I know. So that's pretty much why I liked it. I understand why it was taken out of publication for a long time. Upright Women Wanted was a huge disappointment. I liked it. I wanted to love it. I liked it. But I didn't love it. Hollow City. Okay, that's the second book in the Miss Peregrines series. I actually loved it. I was very lukewarm about the first one. I actually loved the second one. Another book I listened to on audiobook at midnight going to and from work. But I didn't love it enough to keep reading the series. And I think I did get rid of it. My Brief History, which is Stephen King's memoir, which I have on my shelf behind me, probably a few shelves up, and I loved it. Favorite Stephen King book I've read. I read 3 of his books. Humble brag. But I loved it. It's about being disabled and being in physics. So at the time I was disabled and in physics. I was losing my mind, but I'm no Stephen Hawking, so I got my ass out of there. Artificial Condition, second book in the Murderbot series. I really liked it. As fine. I haven't continued in the series, but I didn't like it as much as the first one, but I still liked it, and I plan to continue someday. Earth to Charlie. Oh my god. It's right there. I loved that book. Such a sweet little book, and I remember reviewing it on Goodreads, and it only had like 200 reviews at the time, and I was like blown away because it's such a good book. Highly recommend. It's got like LGBT rep without being a romance, and I really loved it. It's really close to my heart. The author liked my Goodreads review, so now I'm going to own that book forever. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Oh my god. I do not like the Harry Potter books, and I've never liked them. I've never liked them. Even before everything, I never liked them. I'm better than you. But that one wasn't too bad. it explained what happened in the movie, okay? And that's what I really care about. What we see when we read, this was a book I bought when I was in Boston, Massachusetts in like 2016, and I read it again in 2021. And I remember trying to read it in 2016, and it's like very meta about what's happening while you're reading, and it would make me nauseous while I read it. I read it in 2021 in a single day, and I was like, wow, I feel so much regret that this was sitting on my shelves for that many years because it was not a good book, and I no longer own it. The Last Lecture, which I thought at the time I would never get rid of because it's so like emotional. It's about a guy who dies of cancer, and it's a true story, and it's his memoir as he's dying of cancer. And I was like reading it and I was like, wow, I'll never get rid of this book. But I don't know. I would want to read the wife put out a memoir after he passed, and I'm like, I want to read that. But I kind of like, I already experienced the book, you know? And it's a book I see in like a thrift store constantly, so I don't need the book. I got rid of it. Saints. This was a graphic novel by the author who wrote American Born Chinese. I don't know his name, but it's like a dual thing of boxers and saints, and it's about a war. And both of the books tell like the same events from different perspectives of the war, I think. Not read the second book, but I would read it. It was a very fast read, and I liked it a lot, but I no longer own it because I'm like, I don't need it. Number 16 is Bud Not Buddy, which, oh my goodness, was my favorite book when I was a child. It's about a black kid in the Depression who is an orphan. Or I guess not an orphan. Well, actually at the time he would have been an orphan, but today he would be like a foster child. Oh my god. Such a traumatic story. Why was it my favorite book when I was a kid? I don't know, but I read it as an adult and I still loved it, and I think you might love it if you read it. Yeah, leave it at that. I Know This to Be True by Greta Thunberg. This was a Christmas gift from someone because I care about the climate, okay? I care about the climate, okay? And I read it in a single day. I think it was actually not like a book she wrote, but like a speech. A very short book. I think it was fine. I got rid of it though. The Inquisitor's Tale, or The Three Magical Children and Their Holy Dog. This book I bought because it was so beautiful, and I read it and I put it down and I stopped reading it. And at the time, I was like, I'm okay not finishing books. Okay? And I'm still like that. I'm okay not finishing books. If a book is bad, I'm not going to finish it. This book was so bad that after I put it down, I was like, it's bothering me that I don't know how it ends, because maybe I hate it even more than I do, right? I'm like, where could this book be going? And wow, I just didn't like it at all. I actually hated it. And I got rid of it. I left it in a book box. Yeah, a book box. I didn't want someone to have to pay for it. I was like, they won't want to. Then we've got What I Talk About When I Talk About Running. That's a Murakami book. It's right there! Oh my gosh, my nails. Anyways. I love that book. I've read it twice. Yeah. Again, humble brag. I've read a book twice. And I loved it so much. It's his memoir. And he talks about writing and like running, which apparently he's been like a runner his whole life. And he mentions Colorado again, so I was like, whoa, gotta love it. And yeah, it was, I think, one of my favorite books of the year. I gifted it to my mother-in-law, and she read it, and she still talks to me about it and still asks me to give her books like it, and I haven't been able to find any books like it. So if you know some books like that, let me know, please. Then I've got Heartbreaker by Claudia Day, which I still own. It's still on the shelf. I bought it at the Dollar Tree. I read it again, I think in one day. It haunts me. There's something so haunting about it. It's like it follows a cult in the 1980s, like a small group, like a small family who's in an isolated cult, I think in like Alaska in the 1980s. And the plot twists in that book, they haunt me. To this day, they haunt me. 5 stars, obviously. Then I read A Wind in the Door by Madeleine L'Engle, which I think was the second book in the Wrinkle in Time series. I read A Wrinkle in Time a few years before this, and I really liked it. And then I read A Wind in the Door, and I was like, what is this? What is this? And I've heard that the third book is better. But I don't think I'm ever going to read it. I'm like, I even got rid of the first book, A Wrinkle in Time, which I did like. Just because I couldn't stand the association with a wind through the door. A wind in the door. I didn't like it. Alright, then we've got Long Way Down. I think this one's a Jason Reynolds book. This book was great. I read it in one sitting. It's like told through like poetry, I think. It's kind of reads like a poem, and it's about a kid who's, I think, about to go shoot someone, and it's like as he's going down in the elevator from his apartment with a gun, people from his life, from his past, keep getting on and off the elevator, and you kind of like get to know him, and it all takes place over a very short amount of time. I love that book. I did get rid of it, but for the same reason I got rid of Clap When You Land. I wanted someone else to read the book, and it's widely available, so if I ever want to reread it, I can get it from the library or something. But wow, I read that book like a fire hose. Alright, just like a fire hose spraying into my mouth. That's the speed I read that book. I want to reread that book. Then I read Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, which I also have on the shelf. One of the best books I've ever read. One of the best books I've ever read. One of the best books I have ever read. Then the last book I read of the year, I specifically remember where I was reading this book, Shakespeare's Star Wars. Verily, A New Hope. And I loved this book. I read it on my breaks at work in a fast food restaurant, and I just loved it. I love Shakespeare. I haven't read a lot of Shakespeare, but I love Shakespeare. And I used to really love Star Wars. Alright? I won't get into that on the internet, but just know I used to really love Star Wars. And I love that book. But I got rid of it because I was like, I don't need it. I already read it. I'm not going to read it again. But now I'm like, maybe I should read it again. But I'm not going to buy it again. Unless I get the whole set. Then I'll have the whole set and it'll be like a thing. Okay. That's all the books I read in 2021. Bye.